Hello, good morning or afternoon. It's so lovely to see all of you. My name is Ariana. I am the co-director of the Consent Academy, a Seattle-based nonprofit that aims to promote consent culture in everyday life. And I'm really excited to hang out with y'all today. I've been looking forward to this, as always, a lot. I started the stream and I had to stop it and restart it because I forgot to update the title and the category. But luckily I caught it like immediately, like stream elements, put the thing in the chat, and then I was like, wait a second, that's from the Sunday stream. Someday I'll get the workflow down with no mistakes. Not yet though. Anyway, I am really excited to hang out with you. I've been like stressing a bunch, and I want to talk through why, because it is actually related to all of these things we've been talking about. Consent, what does community mean, autonomy, cultural change, the ability to actually say no, collective identity, the importance of parties. Like all of these things actually are coming together in this situation that has me, it's not that stressed. A lot of it's just me imagining it being a lot worse than it actually is, that I know is what's stressing me out, but it's still worth talking about. Anyway, I'm very excited to be here. It is definitely starting to feel like summer. It's getting hotter outside. Uh, I've started to get sweaty just sitting in my chair. I have one of those nice, fancy, like polyurethane leather or something chairs, so like not real leather. Anyway, they're nice because they're easy to clean, but they also make you sweaty. Um, so yeah, a little bit of TMI. I'm very sweaty just sitting here. Anyway, okay, this wasn't actually the first meme I wanted to show today. I didn't put on the one I wanted, but I like this one. It's a screenshot from The Office, and Dwight is shining a light into a big, like, mag light into Toby's face, and Dwight is labeled people with LED headlights, and Toby is labeled everyone else on the road. And I think it's true. I feel like they should be better regulated because I've definitely had times, whether I was driving or just like on a bus or walking down the street, and like these big LED super bright headlights have just like slapped me in the face, assaulted my eyeballs. Not cool. Okay, so I'm gonna go to the other ones. The one I wanted to start with today, there's this little Facebook page that's kind of cute, Sailor Aesthetic One, and they post cute Sailor Moon screenshots with like inspirational statements or affirmations on them. And I like this one. My kindness is not an invitation to treat me poorly. And I think that that's just something that's always good to remember. Especially because sometimes when we're in a space where we're already being really kind to people, it can be harder for us to recognize that we're being treated poorly. I think this is just my personal opinion, because we're already kind of in this space where we're probably really focused on empathy and the other person and the, thing we want to do for them. And then sometimes people can sort of not appreciate it or take advantage of it or feel like it's just expected. Of course, this is what you were going to do. And yeah, anyway, it's a thing. And so it's always good to remember that even when you're trying to be kind to somebody, you don't have to accept poor treatment. And, you know, one of the things that can also go wrong is sometimes if people want to lash out or they're feeling upset and they need an outlet for their emotions, anyone around them who is a soft target or a perceived soft target will often get the brunt of it. I think a common example is like a parent has a bad day at work, and instead of like processing those feelings related to their job, they come home and they get really mad at their kids because the house isn't spotless. And because processing those feelings and expressing frustration is easier in this space where like there's not likely to be negative consequences like losing your job or like looking bad at work, for expressing those feelings at your children or whatever. We all have a tendency to do this from time to time. It's pretty common. It's still important to remember. Okay, continuing forward. This next one, I gotta zoom in for this. There's a picture of Elon Musk saying our cars are semi-sentient robots on wheels. And then there's security camera footage from, it looks like 2019, of a Tesla lighting itself on fire. It's kind of funny. I haven't read enough about it, but there's some interesting, like, sentient AI news happening where there is this, language processing algorithm that's been developed at Google, and one of the people who works on it and interacts with it regularly was having a conversation with it, and the AI, essentially in this case, like functioning as a chatbot, was saying that it is conscious and was making arguments about things. And it was describing things like the difference between feelings and emotions. And the employee believes also that because the AI was saying that it is self-aware, it is conscious, and the employee also really believes it, but it seems as though they've been placed on administrative leave. And, you know, I think that most things are like living things. I'm a bit of an animist as well. Like, I feel like, like as a Native American, it's not very unusual, but also even in Buddhism, the idea that like water has memory and the earth has memory and all this stuff. So it doesn't take very much for me to believe that a computer program could be self-aware. And yeah, it's interesting. I don't know too much about it, but I recommend looking at it. It's kind of fascinating. Okay, the next one, good meme. This is from loadingartist.com, and it's cute little cartoon comic. This person who's probably a teenager saying, now that I've got my driving license, and they're sitting in the car, like adjusting the mirror and stuff, saying, I can finally feel the rush of being an adult. And then they're stuck in bumper to bumper traffic and they're like, I feel so alive. And I think it's pretty funny because I do want to just think about like how much, I know I've talked about this a million times on stream, how much of our lives we end up ceding to things that are not very consensual, and it really doesn't have to be that way. For a lot of people, commute and like having to waste a lot of your life stuck in a vehicle are considered sunk costs. And, when people are, for example, thinking about where they want to live, the amount of infrastructure that's going to be necessary to get them from where they live to where they work or go to school or the things they need to do is not usually a major priority. And related to this recently, I'm not sure how recently it was, but semi-recently, the former internet favorite, not so internet favorite anymore, Neil deGrasse Tyson, made a tweet that people have been dragging him for, which I think is a little unjustified in this case. In other cases, some of the tweets can be pretty cringy, but this one I think is quite on the money, of like people really wanting to tout the environmental friendliness of hybrid or electric vehicles and acting like the people who buy them are doing such a good thing for the environment versus people who do things like choose to live, when possible, within walking distance or public transit distance of the places where they work or go to school. And the environmental impact is obviously going to be massively different. Electric vehicles are not sustainable. You have to drive them quite a bit before, in terms of just pure carbon footprint, they make up for or like are better than traditional gasoline vehicles. There's plenty of people out there who, you do a simple Google search on this, there are lots of people, including, experts on YouTube, who will break this down with lots of charts and facts and everything. But it's pretty well understood that to get an electric vehicle to have a smaller environmental impact just in its manufacturing and its sort of, direct and indirect carbon emissions versus a traditional vehicle, you'd have to drive it quite a bit. And that then produces other issues like just tires alone. It's how many tires are used up and road wear, right? Like the heavier the vehicle, the more it destroys the road. And remember, we've talked about in previous episodes, infrastructure is really expensive to maintain. And it factors into the sort of like energy return on investment problems that we face. And it's not really the subject of today's stream, just musing about it. I don't like cars. I mean, like I do like cars. Like I definitely saw like a, I don't know, vintage Mercedes the other day. I'm more of a Porsche person. I like vintage Porsches a lot, but uh and like got a real deep love for the Firebird. Totally different car, but when I was a teenager, it was like my dream car. I wanted like a 1971 Firebird and like get an actual like Firebird airbrushed onto the hood because I'm a weirdo. Um, so like I can appreciate cars as like works of art and major achievements in like human history. And when I look at them from a wider view, I'm kind of like, ugh, ugh. Okay, anyway, here's another one. It's a tweet. It's a very common tweet where it's a picture of Amsterdam in the Netherlands in 1971 versus 2020. They had a street. This is probably before a lot of air pollution regulations were put in, so it looks very smoggy. And it's, you know, just lots of cars, not a lot of space for pedestrians. The sidewalks are not very wide. The same street in 2020 has now been turned into pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure. And you can see lots of bikes are parked here, and it overall has a more pleasant feeling to it. And I just like this because I like to talk about and think about things like how we can transform the things we've already built, how we don't necessarily have to always completely level a neighborhood or a city or a town or like sprawl or every strode to make something new. There's a lot of stuff we can do in between. Obviously, this is kind of an ideal example because of probably the way this neighborhood is already laid out, but it's still inspirational in its own way. Okay, moving on from talking about cars, because I don't want to spend too much time on it today. I also don't want to spend too much time pre-Stardew Valley, because I kind of want to chill today. And just kind of have a chiller stream. But I want to talk through a few things. Next, I have this article. I'm going to paste it into the chat. You would think that this was a satire, but it's not. And it's too real. Having lived and worked in Japan for many, many years, I can tell you that this is a thing. And yes, so it says, survey in Japan finds half of companies have a morale draining slacker oji-san. So oji-san is like old guy, grandpa kind of person. I worked in public schools where it was really common to have mostly oji-san who had retired and then they came back to kind of work part-time. And they were given there tons of seniority, you know, which is totally fine. Like I'm very into sort of respecting elders and elders kind of occupying a special place within society. But yeah, they'd come back and then they'd mostly like sleep and like walk around and like mildly sexually harass people and make weird jokes and like just kind of slack. And they're usually paid pretty much the same as you. And here it's the subtitle is middle-aged men who take lots of breaks or just sit and do nothing are a common feature of Japanese companies, according to a recent survey. And I think that this is, yeah, it's just really good. This feels very real, very, very natsukashi, sort of like type of nostalgia for my days living and working in Japan. So I'm glad I don't do that anymore. It was a time, difficult time. Working in Japan, if you're not working for a Western company, can be really difficult if you are coming from different cultural background because the expectations and stuff are really intense. But anyway, just read it, check it out. It's, there's a special place in my heart for this kind of Oji-san who kind of just like putters around and is kind of silly and weird and then like goes and teaches a class or two or like does a little bit of work now and then or interrupts everybody in the meetings to like tell a story that's maybe tangentially related to what was being talked about. Um, to me, they were always like mildly aspirational. I mean, I'm kidding and also not kidding at the same time. It's great. It's great. All right. So then let's look at the next thing. So I want to go back to surviving the future. We've been talking about carnival, right? Celebration and its power and uses and its origins. And we've been talking about sort of like how having regular sort of carnival can really facilitate a lot of sort of sustainability and health. I would love a better word than health because health has all this baggage, but for lack of a better word, I generally try to pick sustainability and longevity of a community. And so we've been looking at all of these different aspects, and I think that there's a lot of good conversation we have. And I kind of want to read a bit more of this section, but just review first. We talked about the idea that, carnival creates a sense of membership. It reaffirms group identity and reaffirms group belonging, which is really important. Even people who say are not very well integrated into a group or a culture, who are not very, well liked or don't necessarily have a lot of like friends in any given space. Carnival can, especially when it's done really well, can be a really good way to say like, yes, even if you are on the fringes of this society, you're still part of this society or this group or this identity. And I think that that's important, having things that affirm people's membership in various different ways. Then we also had this idea of emotional daring, sort of allowing yourself to let go of some of the sort of strictures of daily life and push yourself. There's been interesting writings about things like carnival in Venice and how they would all wear these masks, and it was not uncommon during certain periods of time for people to like, they would make the masks so it was clear like what general family lineage they were a part of, and why will make sense in a second, because people would often have like anonymous sex with each other, and you wanted to at the very least make sure it wasn't going to be incest. And so they would wear these masks to conceal their identity, allow them to behave in ways that they normally wouldn't especially if people could see their faces, and then do all kinds of adventurous things together that normally they would never even think to do. That would be, just beyond anything one would imagine doing. But in this space, it was allowable. Now, I'm not saying that carnival and emotional daring always means sex. Definitely does not have to, but there's other types of emotional daring, just, other types of vulnerability you could have with people, or just trying things that are scary to you or challenging or exciting, anything that sort of takes you out of the sort of daily emotional rhythm that we tend to have. The next is continuity, this idea of being part of tradition and ritual, especially things that have had like a very long history and haven't really changed over time, is really important because it also helps you feel connected to a greater whole, not just in the group membership, but like something across time. And knowing that like even after you die, things will continue after you. And I think this is also a really important way to help people process things like mortality. I think that we tend to go to a lot of effort to really ignore mortality, and obviously it makes sense because it's scary and not the most fun thing to think about. But I do think it is important to find ways that are really balanced to help us like think about it without trying to like soothe it away entirely or pretend it's not going to happen or whatever, but to give you this idea of like, you are part of a larger whole. So even after you're gone, the larger whole continues and you were like this integral piece to it as a sort of truth that is not dependent then on, like other faith or belief or something. And also just feeling that you have a place and sort of what the place is in the world and where you fit into things can be incredibly nice. The next point was like consciousness of time and events, feeling the passage of seasons and years and life milestones of yourself and the people around you is really important. It also feeds into all of these previous steps. Then we also have practice. Practice here being that it allows people to cultivate specialized skills like craftsmanship. Think about like Comic-Con or any kind of convention where people are going to come and cosplay. That is its own kind of practice and ritual. People going there dressed up for the fact of like showing what they've made to each other, admiring each other, sort of looking at the creative ways different costumes were approached or the, sensitivity of the skill that was used for creating a particular piece. The ability to sort of transform and temporarily embody a character, to bond with other people that you might see that have the same character as you. Something like cosplay facilitates a lot of these things that we're talking about, but also things like performance. And I like this point here also, fairness. The craft will require you to be fair in your judgment of yourself and others in the performance of skill. And then there's also courage. You will need to have the courage from time to time to attempt something beyond your present capacity, to make sacrifices, to take risks, to persist despite criticism and setbacks. So, these skills that build community membership, that build a sense of belonging, because like if I try something daring, if I push myself, and then in a space where like it's still scary and risky, but it's sort of also well supported through the structure and the ritual and the sort of rhythm of the celebration or the event, it also creates a sort of special type of opportunity to do something new with maybe fewer consequences if it goes wrong. Okay, so then there's a couple more. There's meaning here. So I want to just read this one because I don't think we got to read it yet. Ritual does not supply answers, it suggests insights and raises contradictions to be explored, to grow into through a lifetime. Its characteristic medium is narrative truth, the artistic, poetic, performative truth with the power to raise questions which reward long reflection. If not with literal answers, then perhaps with a gradual deepening of the questioner, who is free to reach and live by his own conclusions. So this one is, I think, a little bit more subtle of a point, and it's definitely like a sort of deep theory on what ritual actually is. And here, this kind of ritual is not something that necessarily has an answer, right? If we talk about like the idea of continuity, this does not give you an answer to the difficulty of mortality and death and like the inevitability of it, and the fact that it's something we all share in common with all living things, except for maybe tardigrades. They might be special. And a couple other, like jellyfish and stuff that can be immortal. But for the most part, even those species that technically could be immortal do die. They're killed by disease or eaten by a predator or just not enough food. This is something that we all share. And ritual here is not going to give us an answer to what this means, if it even means anything. But it does give us the idea that there is something to be known and to be understood there. And so having a, chance to explore these ideas and give credit and time and space to the topic. Like not every festival is about death. Like a lot of them are not, but some are. But then there's all kinds of other things that allow us special time to reflect on different aspects of life. it says here, narrative truth, performative truth that raises more questions that then give you the opportunity to think about things in new ways. And that's one of the powers of things like art in general. It's, you know, it doesn't necessarily matter if you like quote unquote understand the art you're interacting with, whether it's a painting or a performance piece or a piece of music or some literature. Yes, it's nice if you like get it and you whatever, like art theory, but those things are not required. And they can really, just experiencing it and allowing yourself to process these things and allowing yourself to, kind of get a sense of other questions that could be asked can be really, really helpful and really, really important to sort of the emotional, quality of our lives. And this is also, I think, one of the reasons why a lot of people like travel is because it gives us the opportunity to ask questions and to think on things we wouldn't normally engage with. So yeah, continuing. Locality. Ritual marks the community's residence in a place. It puts down emotional roots and changes the nature of the place a little bit, making it special. Because the ritual has happened there, you will think about it in a different way for the rest of your life. Like a tree under which you once made love, and which you still pass with musing nostalgia from time to time. Ritual events make places, bring them alive, haunt them or bless them, populate them with the spirit of what happened, so that today's inhabitants are not alone. So this is one of those things that is also, I think, really kind of outside a lot of the ways we tend to think about place and sense of place, but especially in sort of like Western wealthy capitalist sort of societies, because remember, we're all kind of being encouraged to constantly move around for jobs or to like be disconnected from the land that we live on in different ways and like not have a sense of the deep history of a place, and oftentimes having almost no sense of the history of where we live. And I don't just mean like which famous people lived there, but like just like how did this town develop? Who were the people who were here? What were their lives like? Why is this tree, half burned and half like flourishing? Just all these things. And if I go to a place like, say, the certain ancestral homes of the Choctaw people, there's like a particular mound that is part of the sort of like origin story of the Choctaw Nation and has been a sacred site, forever. And it's no longer in Choctaw territory. There's like the Mississippi Band of Choctaw, and then there's the ones that were put in Oklahoma, and there were a couple of other groups that kind of went off. Some diverted all the way down to Texas and stuff. But, one of the reasons why during the Trail of Tears, people were not just like pushed together closer in the areas that were sort of the ancestral homelands, but actually full on moved, is to intentionally sever people from this sense of history because it's a source of cultural dignity and power. If I know that like the bones of pretty much all my ancestors are here, and if I know that like this is the place where like, 200 generations back my ancestors have been and are connected to, that's going to give me a certain type of confidence and self-esteem and self-worth that is really unique. And so purposely moving people away from ancestral homelands can really sever that. And having celebrations, having these kinds of transformative experiences, having this kind of ritual is really important. Anyway, hello, Krellin. I hope that your cat feeding mission went well. Yeah. So thinking about locality and how different ideas of a sense of place. we're really encouraged. This is one of the things that I've touched on a little bit here and there in previous streams, but part of the idea of like whiteness is the eschewing of ethnic identities as Europeans, right? And sort of almost mocking our traditional cultures. And how do I want to say this? So I get into a lot of conversations about things like cultural appropriation, and it's part of the topic of today's stream that I want to talk about a little bit. But it's one of the things in this idea is like sometimes I try to talk to uh, white people who are wearing dreadlocks. Technically, it should only be locks. Dreadlocks refers to Rastafarians with locks practicing a particular, uh, homage to a particular historical figure that is sort of the basis around the philosophy of Rastafarianism. And uh, I'll often hear from people who are like Central European that, well, it's not appropriation because Vikings wore dreadlocks. And setting aside the ways in which that is not entirely accurate, and also setting aside the ways in which that even if they did, it still ignores the present material reality for Black people, the history of policing of Black hair, both in Europe and in North America, or just all of the Americas, the ways in which like there's still tons of discrimination. Setting aside the two things about whether or not the statement about Vikings wearing locks is accurate, and setting aside the actual contemporary lived reality for people, to me, there's always this interesting thing of like, okay, but you're like Austrian. Are you a Viking? And there's this idea that because some other European culture did it, therefore it is also my plaything. My other thing is always like, okay, cool. Like Vikings are cool and interesting. There's technically a difference between like Vikings and the Danes. Like the Danes could, sail to Ireland for, normie business, or they could come as Vikings. And what were Vikings famous for? What made them Vikings? A lot of violence and theft and murder and sex crimes. And to me, it's always really interesting. There's like several layers here at the same time, which is like, are you a Viking? Yeah, exactly, Krellin. Viking wasn't a culture, it was a job. So, is that your ancestry? If it was, were you the kind of like one of the other things that is always gets me, especially when I see people who are like, white supremacists of some variety who like really worship Vikings. I'm like, yeah, but like there's a 90% chance, actually higher than that, that if you were alive back in that time, you would have been a slave. Like slavery was pretty common practice back then. It's kind of one of the things that they did when they went as Vikings. They'd like kidnap a bunch of people and bring them away from the localities that they knew, and all of these senses of membership and connection and a sense of place and like belonging in something, because that's really, really traumatic and really disempowering. And then you were a slave. So anyway, it always really kind of surprises me, this argument, because it's like, one, is that actually even your culture? Can you actually trace your ancestry to Vikings? Are you sure they weren't just, if you can, are you sure they weren't just Danes or slaves? Why, just because other European cultures did it, is it like everybody's plaything? And then also, why are the Vikings the people you want to look up to? Like, Norse mythology, super cool. Lots of things about Norse culture, super cool. Like every culture, also lots of things that are weird and disturbing, like telling your old people to go throw themselves off of cliffs. Don't super love that imagery, but a lot of cultures practice like scene-aside in different ways. But to me, it's like, it's never a good faith argument. It's just never a good faith argument. And like I said, that's setting aside the like, is it actually true that Vikings were locks? And setting aside the idea of like, well, there's the history. One of the things I also tend to say in these arguments is like the swastika, for example, is actually a sacred symbol in Buddhism. It means death. The opposite direction means life. If you go and look at many maps of Japan, especially old maps, but even contemporary maps, you'll see the sort of reverse swastika everywhere because that's the symbol for Buddhist temples. It doesn't just come from Japan, it's also from India. And we have records of trade between Central and Eastern Asia and Scandinavia, at least back until the 3rd century. And we know this partially because the swastika rune was carved into a lot of temples along with the Volknot. The Volknot, if you don't know what that is, like this. It's this little triangle doodad. So what you need to know is this is the new swastika. I know I'm on a random tangent. It's the new swastika because the swastika and this were used interchangeably in Norse runic symbols since about the 3rd century. Yada yada. A lot of new new day neo-Nazis love to use Volknot as like a stealthy way. But anyway, even though Buddhism had the swastika first, like for thousands of years before the Nazis used it, even though it's 100% documented, 100% sure it has a very particular meaning, it was appropriated and perverted. Even so, I don't get to go around and argue I can have the swastika anywhere I want, anytime I want it, simply because of this history. And you can't say boo when there's, 100+ years of pain and culture and history and genocide and all kinds of other things associated with it. I don't get to just say, like, well, because I'm a Buddhist monk and Buddhism had it first, I'm allowed to do whatever I want with it. In fact, there are many places where that's just straight up illegal. And yeah, anyway, I kind of got ahead of myself. I'm going to read this a little bit more and then look at the 8 and 9 as well. So continuing with locality. And when ritual takes the form of carnival, local diversity goes to imaginative extremes. York's signature carnival was the lavish display of Corpus Christi. Dunmo's famous flitch of bacon is awarded to the married couple who had lived together for a year without quarrel or regret. I would have won that every year. In Orkney, carnival was organized around a plowing competition in which the farmers were young boys and the horses were young girls. Cider growing areas took care to have carnivals near their apple trees and to pour cider on their roots to make them feel appreciated. Ritual is not just any ritual, it is yours. Because this is the ritual which you help to make with the people you live amongst in the place where you live. In the past, there were, in addition, 2 substantial assets that were brought to community by the ritual carnival. Social rank on hold. For the duration of the carnival, at least, social rank became less important and hard to sustain with due seriousness. The carnival created its own temporary, unofficial, popular aristocracy. Rank, privilege, received common sense and norms were suspended. Carnival is always, in a sense, the feast of fools, in which the powerful, the pompous, the monstrous, outrageous, and some of the frightening aspects of society could be laughed at and made safe. Our marketplace full of laughing people is hard to impress. Laughter upstages rank. The ecstasy upstages rank too. It need not be ecstasy of any kind to be wary of. It can be the spectacular dancing joy we encounter in, for instance, Bach's Fruia Dick. I'm gonna say that because I think the U should be pronounced as U. Apologies. In his cantata number 30, music with its own prescendence and authority, unconstrained joy is an equalizer. As the historian of carnival, Barbara Ehrenreich notes, it's difficult, if not impossible, to retain one's regal dignity in the mad excitement of the dance. And I think this is why a lot of people like things like ecstatic dance. I'm not necessarily a huge fan. I can like it in certain times. I don't always like to go to places where ecstatic dance is being practiced because of other issues like cultural appropriation, which we're going to talk about. Peace. Carnival is a promoter of peace. The lack of discipline and hierarchy makes Carnival a poor foundation on which to build an army. Other incentives to fight, such as attack by neighbors, may brush aside Carnival's preference for peace, but it is still a property of some value. Carnival does not need the further excitement of war. So, one of the other things I want to talk about here, I love this place. Ritual is not just any ritual, it is yours because it is the ritual which you help make with the people you live amongst and the place where you live. And I like this image of like the people who make cider, you know, wanting to pour some of the cider on the roots of the trees to connect back to the trees themselves. And this is one of those things I'm going to get very like woo woo with you for a second. So just bear with me. One of the things that's always frustrated me about a lot of cultural appropriation is that there's always a deep history on any land that you live on that you can explore and reclaim if it was yours and has been lost, especially if we're talking about people who are, say, European and have lost culture and deep connection and deep history and a particular type of group membership. And I'm not talking nationalism to the vehicle of whiteness. And to me, it's about also respecting the land that you're on. Because to me, the culture that developed in a space is, in some parts, a conversation that was had between the people who were living there and the environment. The ways that people, you know, interacted with it, came to know it and to be known by it. You know, humans, we have a tremendous impact on any place that we live, and a lot of evolution of different animals and plants and different things were shaped by interaction with us. And, you know, human, not talking about like terrible climate change and climate, you know, ecosystem degradation, but we help also make more room for life. Like life tends to create more room for life up into a certain point. Um, and so the culture that developed in a place, the rituals, the rhythms of life, the routines, the, you know, the value system, that's part of the land that you're on. And to me, when you just want to say like, oh, well, I want to appropriate from this other place because it's more spiritual, it's kind of offensive to me, to the ground, to the earth that you're on, like the area, because to me it's like you're denying the deep spiritual connection that your ancestors had to the places that they lived. You know, we can set aside the fact that certain religions that, like Christianity as it went through Europe, really discouraged, in some ways, certain types of connections to the ecosystem and to the land, and really encouraged people to be focused on the next life and all of this. That is its own thing. But I'm talking about sort of like pre-Christian traditions, especially in Europe. To me, that's like a really important and profound type of connection to the land. And I'm going to end my very spiritual conversation about let's not be offensive to the ground that we're standing on. But I think it's still important. So then a couple other things. Hey, Rodden, welcome. So I want to talk about a couple things. I want to tell you a little bit about the situation that has me a bit stressed. No, thank you. How do I wanna block this person. No, how do I do that? I don't know how to ban. Yeah, ban this person. Did it. Did it. I figured it out. Cool. Okay. The situation that has me a bit stressed. So I'm not going to name names. I'm not trying to call anyone out particular. I'm going to talk about these things very generally. I get hi Siri, no worries. I get hired sometimes to go teach different types of consent workshop at different types of events. And I tend to be really wary of certain types of events, certain types of like really hippie things, certain things in like say the Burning Man community, because there tends to be a lot of appropriation of indigenous culture, and that tends to be kind of triggering for me. The reason being that for Native Americans until like the 1990s, a lot of our own culture was legally not accessible to us. Like speaking our own language, practicing our own religions, our ceremonies, our dances, like they were all heavily legislated. Like Native American dances, there were huge campaigns among white women in different parts of the country to make them federally outlawed because they were seen as too sexual and therefore a threat to like whatever. And Native Americans were, it was like illegal for us to own eagle feathers or in my tribe, even like hawk feathers, because hawk feathers are sort of the thing that's really spiritual to us. Um, Thank you, Sherry, for adding that block term. Uh, and the thing is, though, non-Indigenous people have always been allowed to play Indian as much as they want. Um, and I agree with you, Krellin. White people absolutely should not be trying to replicate any native rituals or trappings, 100%. And the thing is like lots of tribes, and like there are over like 700 just in the US and Canada, like more than 500 that are federally recognized. And those are just the ones that have survived. I really only know like Choctaw culture, and then I know like a couple other things about, the area in Massachusetts where I grew up, and then some sort of like general overarching issues facing natives in general and like certain milestones in history. So I can't really talk about like the particular, issues faced by the Sac and Fox tribe or, anything like that. I can really only speak to sort of my culture, but not being allowed to even speak our own language. And then, say, for example, during World War II, the Choctaw were some of the sort of most used code talkers. So, like, because we secretly kept our language alive, that allowed, the US government to have a strategic advantage in World War II. And the thing is, it's like keeping these things alive was incredibly dangerous. Plus, there was the like, residential schools, the period of kill the Indian, save the man, that was really attempting to completely destroy indigenous culture, to forcibly assimilate us. Then there's like the 60s scoop in which Native American children were, in mass taken away from indigenous families and placed with white Christian families to try to, again, forcibly assimilate them. My family worked very hard to avoid this, tried to pass instead of Native American as Mexican immigrants because in Texas and Oklahoma in like the early 1900s through the 60s and such, that was safer. It was safer to be like a hardworking but job stealing Mexican immigrant than it was to be indigenous. Because the US is dependent on the constant subjugation of two groups of people, Black people and indigenous people. And it's why the sort of like blood quantum and the one drop rule are also contradictory, right? The one drop rule was applied to Black people. If you had even one drop of Black blood, legally you were considered Black. And then the federal government created the idea of blood quantum, which was like if you didn't have a certain percentage of indigenous blood, you were no longer considered indigenous. We're the only people who have to like get with literally certificate of degree of Indian blood from the federal government and carry it around as a pedigree like we're a fucking horse or a dog or something. It's gross. Nobody else has to face that kind of dehumanization on the regular. Thankfully, my tribe does not care about blood quantums. It has its own things. You have to have had a direct ancestor on the final Dawes rolls. I do not have a direct ancestor. I have the siblings of my direct ancestor are on the Dawes rolls. My direct ancestor, and remember, this was like 1905, right? I'm not talking like tens and tens of generations ago. I'm talking like late 1800s, early 1900s. That's like 3 generations. Went to Texas instead because my wave of Choctaw going along the Trail of Tears, they were all put onto the Dawes rolls and then disenrolled in mass because they were considered too Black because they had intermixed with freed slaves too much and they were considered sus by the federal government. And some of my ancestral family fought it and some of them didn't. Anyway, it's complicated. So, full disclosure, I am not enrolled, but I have I have ancestors, siblings that are enrolled, and their descendants. Anyway, yep, you're right, Krellin. Both of these serve the same purpose. Through the one drop rule, expanded the slave pool, while blood quantum limits the number of people that reparations are owed to. And the thing is like trying, like, another example, right? A lot of people are like, okay, but like my family came after, or I've had Europeans say to me, my family has nothing to do with this. We never left. And it's like, well, first of all, like part of how feudalism really ended and a lot of democracy kind of became what it was is like colonizing North America. Like most democracies are based off of Iroquois Confederation law structures, and then also like people leaving and sending money back and like freeing up land, because like prior to colonialism almost all land in Europe was like owned by the nobility, so there was no path to land ownership, etc., etc. The Revolutionary War was also a huge part about it. Was, and this is not taught in most history books, the British government had a ton of treaties with different indigenous nations to say, we're not going to expand any further and we're not going to kill you. And the colonists were like, look that, we want to murder some natives and we want to steal their shit and their land. And that's one of the reasons why during the Boston Tea Party, they dressed up like Native Americans. It wasn't because they wanted to fake their identity or be like super rebellious. It was, we want to kill some natives. And the other thing, another way in which everybody, like Europe profited from it tremendously. I have so many complaints about just like a lot of Europe conversations I've had to have with Europeans related to really racism. They try to be like, oh, well, we banned slavery like way before America did. And it's like, maybe you banned it in front of your citizens' eyes, but like in your colonies, that persisted until like the 70s. So shut up. Like you got Belgium and their king literally had policies to like chop off the hands and feet of children whose parents couldn't produce enough rubber, and then they would like bring the hands and feet to the parents to be like, better get your quota up. And yeah. Anyway, everybody profited off of it. Europe even profited off of the Atlantic slave trade, even if they weren't buying it, because of just like the increasing GDP even of America allowed more trade, more products. That cotton that was being grown wasn't just staying there. It made it so that cotton and cloth was a lot more affordable in Europe, all kinds of things. But even something more recent, if you used Zoom during the pandemic, or even if you didn't, because the world's economy was tremendously helped by the existence of Zoom, it's important to know that the land that Zoom is on was stuff that was forcibly taken from a tribe in California in like the 70s. So we're all implicated, right? And I say this with the full understanding, like some of my ancestors were on the second voyage of the Mayflower, so like OG colonizers. And some of my ancestors were in America the whole time. Some of my ancestors came to the United States during the potato famine. Some of my ancestors escaped, sectarian violence in Egypt and then went to France and then tried to pretend they were British and then moved to Alabama. Complicated lineage. But both of these things can be true at the same time. I can be the descendant of OG colonizers and the descendant of the people that they oppressed, and like they don't cancel each other out. So anyway, I have lots of feelings and thoughts about these things. Everybody in the entire world has profited from and continues to profit from the oppression of indigenous people, not just in North America, but everywhere. And it's an issue that is kind of big. One of the other things to note is that like a lot of tribes had practices of adoption. I think the Navajo still do. Like if you kind of like integrate yourself into the community and pay your dues, you can get like adopted into the tribe. You don't become like federally recognized Native American, but like it's more about kinship anyway, like Indigenous identity. It's one of the reasons why we all drag Elizabeth Warren for her DNA test. There are other actual like legal ramifications of her DNA test, specifically the Indian Child Welfare Act, which is what stopped the federal policy of adopting Indigenous children into non-Indigenous families. Um, Basically, as much as possible, they have to be kept within the community, even in foster care. Technically, it's illegal in the United States for any law, especially any federal law, to be racially based. So Elizabeth Warren being like, my DNA test proves that I'm Native American increases the common perception that indigeneity is just about DNA, and that puts things like the Indian Child Welfare Act into risk. That's not to say that Elizabeth Warren is, you know, disliked by all of Native Americans. She's done some pretty good things for people like the Wampanoag in Massachusetts, as well as the Mohawk and a couple other tribes that have faced some difficulties. Mixed bag. I mean, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, also a huge mixed bag. A lot of early rulings that she put out there were like incredibly racist, used the doctrine of discovery, saying that Native Americans should have brought these court cases to trial in the 1700s when the issue was first discovered, and therefore the Supreme Court wasn't actually going to rule in their favor because, and it's like absurd, completely absurd. Anyway, Ruth Bader Ginsburg eventually sort of started to learn more about Indigenous issues. So anyway, there's a lot that goes on here. Some of the other issues that can come up with just appropriation of Indigenous culture is like, think about people who are in politics, even the people who are part of the UN. Most of these people, like in the UN, they're not experts on like Indigenous culture and history and like, you know, tribal sovereignty and rules. They're often political appointees, the rich friends of politicians, the people who like just manage to schmooze and impress the right people. And so if we're constantly watering down things like the concept of a tribe by saying like the bride tribe or like calling your friend group a tribe, that hurts the idea of tribal sovereignty. If you know, constantly are wearing like fake war bonnet headdresses at like Coachella or Burning Man or hippie festivals, that makes them seem like costumes, which then makes it so that, you know, Indigenous students who want to say, you know, bring their culture into important life milestones like graduating from university, a lot of universities will like threaten to not let the student graduate because of wanting to sort of add aspects of regalia to the outfit, whereas like other things are not so policed. You know, sweat lodges, also difficult. Technically, the tribes that practice sweat lodges, it's considered a cleansing ritual only for people who do not menstruate, because menstruation was considered its own sacred, connected to the earth cleansing ritual every month. Therefore, it was only supposed to be people who don't menstruate. And sweat lodges can kill you. They're supposed to be very controlled in their practice, but then every time a hippie does it and dies or almost dies, it increases the risk of those things being outlawed, which would then again deny the tribes that practice these things the right to practice their own culture. These things everywhere, over and over and over again, these problems come up. So then, getting back to my main point, I get nervous going to these certain types of festivals. I love the idea of Burning Man, for example. I don't go to it because there's too much of it. And like I think I've mentioned before, like my family even has faced a lot of violence directly correlated with being Native American. Like as a kid, my grandmother and great grandmother were murdered, like very violently. It's also one of those reasons why I don't like a lot of true crime stuff, because people have definitely come to try to tell my mom that like the murder of her mother was their favorite murder, and I'm like, that's disgusting. I would have probably punched that person. I'm not saying that's the right response. That's just the response I might have had, or throw my drink at them. That's probably more my speed. Anyway, these things are all connected, right? Sexualization and fetishization and dehumanization, commodification of Indigenous people and culture is also directly correlated to higher suicide rates, higher rates of sexual violence. Like most Indigenous women experience their first, and yes, I mean first, sexual assault before the age of 12. Like this, and this is a very unique thing where usually violent crime happens within racial groups, except for violence against Indigenous people tends to mostly be happening. 98% of it is at the hands of white people. And so it's all connected. It's all connected. So when I tell somebody, hey, like, I'm coming to your festival, uh, disagree, Carlin. Yeah, I appreciate that. I noticed that you have like an orgy tent that you've called a teepee. I don't think so. That's the thing. Like, I'm putting my neck out there to be like, hey, this is the bare minimum I'm going to need from you for me to feel safe coming here. Don't call everything a tribe. I don't want to see sweat lodges. We're in Europe. Saunas. You have saunas. It's the same goddamn thing, more or less. You don't need to like align yourself with the image of authenticity because it's tied to spirituality. Like, you can make it spiritual, you can make it your own thing. Saunas, you don't have to steal from somebody else. It's the same thing with like tantra. Like, first of all, like, tantra isn't actually about sex. My lineage of Buddhism is a tantric lineage. It does not have anything to do with sex. Technically, yes, there are like rituals that are sexual in nature. They are banned in my lineage, Shingon, because there's too much risk of it being non-consensual. So like there's a handful of people who still practice them and then teach them to the next generation so that they're not lost. But it's a very strictly controlled group of people with a lot of careful sort of like protections in place because those rituals are dangerous. And in my lineage of Buddhism, one of the key it's esoteric Buddhism, which also doesn't mean like cool and mysterious. People use esoteric kind of weird as well. It means direct transmission. So like if you want to become ordained like I did and you want to progress in Buddhist study, you have to have a teacher who will teach you directly because the idea is these teachings are really powerful, and if you're not given them in the right order and in the right context and with an expert who's able to decide when you're ready for them, you're going to probably hurt yourself and other people with them. And that comes back to the same idea. Not all knowledge is for everyone all the time. And not everybody's culture is a plaything. You can have things that like, and this is not to say that you couldn't say become a Buddhist monk like I did. It's not to say you couldn't say become really deeply embedded in certain, indigenous spiritual traditions and incorporate them into your life. I think uh, who was it? Jiri, you mentioned I do have a couple of Ojibwe traditions I follow, but also tied strongly to my upbringing with someone of the culture. I also hold those traditions with the weight they deserve. This is exactly it. Like, when I talk about appropriation, sometimes people think I'm trying to say, like, you can't do anything except, like, eat schnitzel and pretzels and, like, wear lederhosen. And it's like, it's not at all what I'm saying. It's not at all what I'm saying. And the thing is, there's like an idea of paying your dues, if that makes sense. Like for me to become a Buddhist monk, I did not just show up and say, yo, ordain me. Like it was more than a decade of like formal study and then this intense apprenticeship that sucked ass. And it was just like constant verbal abuse and like stress and like never getting anything right and like extreme pressure, and then incredible moments of discovery and like understanding and learning and connecting. But like it took a lot for me to even get like the first level of ordination. And it demanded a lot of me, and I had to be really committed to it. It's not something I can just like pick up and put down anytime I want. Like, I'm not associated with a temple or anything right now because there are no temples in Europe for Shingon. And I'm not like trained enough to start one or officially teach things. I can unofficially teach meditation. I still chant still do a lot of the sort of rituals I'm supposed to do every day. And it's not something that I can just like set aside when I want to, because that's one of the other things that comes to it. There's the phrase like everybody wants to be black until it's time to actually be black. And what that often means is people want the fun stuff of another culture, the things that make them feel cool or interesting or like are fun or playful. And then they're wanting to just put it down and cast it away the second it asks anything of them. Okay, this is all to preface with what is actually bothering me. I'm supposed to teach at this festival. They had an issue of there's like this symposium the first day. We all give speeches. Last year I gave one on like power and privilege and how like there's an exercise I do to help people like analyze how much power they have relative to each other. It was the most privileged room I've ever been in my life. It made me deeply uncomfortable because like it's you start with like 5 fingers up and then I make some statements, and if it's true for you, you add a finger, and if it's not true for you, you take one down. And it's things like being white and straight and Christian or culturally Christian, or like, you know, being a citizen of the country that you live in, being a native speaker of the language of the country that you live in, being able to afford to come to the event, etc., etc. At the end of the thing, I had 2 fingers, and most people had 10, and some people even complained that they should have more. And the idea there is like the number of fingers you have up is how many times you get to say no and have that no be respected. And if you go beyond that, you know, you're going to be seen as difficult or hostile, or like people are just not going to listen to you, or you may even face violence in response to it. So I was trying to say to people like, hey, you know, if you have a lot of no's, you can feel safe to come to like this sex positive hippie festival because and go push your own boundaries, whatever, because you have so many opportunities to say no. But like, what am I going to say yes to so I can hold on to my 1 or 2 no's for something really important to me? And so I was like kind of calling everybody out. This other person gave a speech on being tokenized as a trans man and being like, you know I'm only here because it makes your event look good. And I was like invited to come here and blah, blah, blah. So like these are like not gentle talks. But this year, my friend, a trans man, gave a talk about cultural appropriation and invited anybody wearing appropriative hairstyles to cover their hair or to consider covering their hair. And he didn't single anybody out. He didn't like call anybody an asshole, nothing. But the wrong white woman cried and all hell broke loose. There was some conversation on Facebook. I joined it a little bit because the person who was trying to defend the use of their girlfriend wearing locks brought up Native American issues in a very ignorant and bigoted way to try to shut down a discussion of anti-Black racism. I was having none of it. The organizer of the event was very uncomfortable with the fact that I commented on it, wanted to have this meeting with me. We had the meeting, it was fine. But upon reflection, I got like retroactively frustrated about things that were said. They've agreed to put something about cultural appropriation into their code of conduct. But one of the things that's happened is they really keep trying to say, like, my event should only be for a place for everybody to forget about the issues of the world. And my response was, that's only really possible for really privileged people. Like, I don't ever forget about the oppression that I face, like, that it's always there with me. And, like, I don't want to have to sacrifice some of my dignity to come and teach at an event. Like if I see, you know, a fake teepee or people wearing headdresses or anything like that, like I'm gonna leave because that's a hard boundary for me. I don't want to be dehumanized in these spaces. And like, you know, we've already had an incident where like I got called Pocahontas and like somebody implied that Charlie has a fetish for Pocahontas because of being with me, and like there's too many dream catchers everywhere. And like people with dream catcher tattoos, which like if you've ever thought about getting one of those, don't do it. That will like curse you to have bad dreams for the rest of your life. just so you know. Like that's literally because dream catchers are supposed to catch the bad dreams. And if you tattoo it onto yourself, you're basically like stitching your bad dreams onto yourself. It's horribly unlucky. Do not do that. Yeah, exactly, Rodden. Basically, they want it to be specifically for rich, privileged white people. And this is the point I'm trying to make is that unless you're intentionally making space for people who are more marginalized, if you're not intentionally making space for anyone in particular, you will end up making space only for the most privileged and powerful. And then the people who are more marginalized who come are going to be it's a kind of survivorship bias where they're going to be the kinds of people who don't care about these issues or need the money so bad they're willing to pretend they don't care or like have a lot of internalized racism or homophobia or whatever. And they're often the kinds of people who are going to say, well, I don't have a problem with you doing this thing. And this is also one of those other points that's difficult. We tend to want to think about anything to do with identity, especially in white culture on the hyper individual level or the entirely universal level, and we forget about the collective level that we like do have collective identities. Like I have a part of a collective identity as a white person and a person who has, say, Irish heritage and whose ancestors, some of them were original colonizers, and I have a collective identity as an indigenous person, as someone who's Choctaw, as someone who's queer. It's like, and so I am part of this greater whole, and I'm also beholden to these greater wholes and the conversations being had at that level. So one of the things that's tough is if you look at this, if I go to a festival like this where there's going to be things that are dehumanizing to me, the idea of membership is immediately out the window. I don't belong there. It is very clear that that is not a place that is for me. Emotional daring, I pretty much have to like cut myself off from my emotions. Otherwise, I'm probably going to get into a bunch of arguments with people, which I don't always want to do. There's no sense of continuity because these festivals are a hodgepodge of like, I'm just going to pick and choose whatever little bits from all these different cultures I like and call it spiritual and like whatever. Um, Krillin, sadly, all your collective identities are assholes, which is why most white people ignore that category. It's true. I mean, like, I think that if you can go back in history, there is always a point in time where, like, it's no longer an asshole thing. Um, and one of the other ways I like to think about it, and this is also one of the arguments I try to make for reparations, and I'm not the person who came up with this, but I don't remember where I heard it. Imagine someone is the new CEO of a company, and they come in and they look at the, assets and debts information, and they look at all the assets and they say, wow, great, we can use all of these. I can't wait to spend this and like invest this and blah, blah, blah. And then they look at the debts column and they're like, we're not going to pay any of this back because I had nothing to do with this. I wasn't here when these debts were incurred and I didn't agree to these debts. You can't do business like that, right? Like you don't get both. If you don't pay those debts, they're going to come and take the assets and probably you're going to go to jail and your company's going to close. But the same is true with things like ancestral debts and historical debts. I mean, like the current king of Belgium like just visited the Congo and like paid some lip service to like the colonial past, did not actually actively apologize for any of it, returned like a handful of stolen artifacts. Um, and there's some, like hope that there's going to be the return of this guy's tooth, the first prime minister of the Congo, who was assassinated by Belgium in like the 70s during the decolonial movement. And the assassins like kept his teeth. And there's some hope, and that's all that's left of this guy. And there's some hope that the like one remaining tooth will be returned to uh, the Congo. And yeah, I mean, like no real talk of reparations, just this idea. Um, and then, like to me, if I'm at one of these festivals where there's tons of appropriation and mismatching, there's no consciousness of time and events. It's not part of anything that's like celebrating the achievements of this community. It's not about this community. It's about, in many ways, distancing yourself from your own history, your own continuity, your own ancestral memory, and saying, I don't want to have anything to do with this. I want to take from other things. And it doesn't provide meaning. It's honestly the destruction of meaning. Taking things out of their context always causes loss of meaning, but these sort of just appropriation festivals are a whole new level. And it's not something that is yours, right? These are not rituals that are yours. They're not of you. And they're not a thing of peace. They're a holdover of colonial violence. So to me, it's really antithetical to all of these principles of the way that carnival and celebration can build a deeper sense of community. And I think it's why a lot of them have failed to create even bigger sort of cultural healing and revolution and social change within white spaces, because a lot of them lack these deeper things. And the structure, maybe some of them encourage certain types of it, like a sense of social belonging, but there's these other components are missing. So there's, this person who, Tama Okun, who made the white supremacy culture characteristics document. Their website's really amazing. And there are these principles about like the antidote to these things. I said I was only going to talk for a while and then play Stardew Valley, but I like this image here. Know yourself, work on all three levels, the individual, the collective, and the universal. Think and act collectively, be accountable to principles and people, honor and build power on the margins, transparency, setting explicit goals, use organizing mind, and remember, this is also like institutional and cultural memory. We don't tend to preserve that very well. Take risks and learn from mistakes, and seek connections and choose love over fear. The thing is, though, especially when it comes to things like fragility, we're often choosing fear over our love of each other. And I really like this page. There's also the whole characteristics of white supremacy culture. There's the original document, but Tama Okun has gone and shortened it and condensed some of the things for sort of clarity. It's also important to know, and one of the things that I deeply can relate to, is the original document was written out of spite. Here it says, sometime in the late 1990s, I arrived home after a particularly frustrating consultation with an organization I was working with at the time. In a flurry of exasperation, I sat down on my computer and typed the words flowing of their own accord into a quick and dirty listing of some of the characteristics of white supremacy culture that show up in our organizations, community, and homes. I relate to this hard. So most of the best writing I've ever done is when I was really angry. But here's the document if you want to read it on what white supremacy culture is and the updates. And, some of them are really important, which is looking at things like fear of conflict. This is one of the things that really came up in my conversations with the sort of executive director of this festival. They're so afraid of conflict that they're wanting to tamp things down, which then allows other types of conflict and violence to persist. There's also this idea of like perfectionism. Like if there's any conflict, that means that everything is wrong. That means that I'm bad. That means that this and this and this. So we have to pretend like nothing's happening. And then there's the idea of there being like one right way, which shows up a lot in organizers not wanting to actually hear outside advice. I've been told that I'm not objective because I'm mixed race, so I can't be objective about racism, which is silly. And there's lots of other things, this either or binary thinking, a lot of the idea of like, well, if we start talking about cultural appropriation in our spaces, where's the line? Are we going to ban kimonos? What's the difference between a kimono and a European bathrobe? I don't think there's a difference. I didn't say it, but my thought was, if you don't know the difference between the two, that's part of the problem. Progress is bigger, more quantity over quality. One of the things I always stress when we do any kind of organizational consultations is to slow down. Don't try to grow so fast. You don't need to make tons of profit. You don't need to reach more people. Every event doesn't need to be bigger than the last one. It's important. And I do want to stress that the particular issue I'm talking about right now, I'm not actually talking about any one specific person currently. I'm amalgamating lots and lots and lots of different expressions of the exact same conversation I've had with people and the exact same issues I face at different festivals and events, because I'm not trying to like subtweet this one person. I'm not trying to sort of like cause any particular conflict. I'm just trying to talk more sort of broadly. So don't try to look for who am I talking about or what is going on here, because it's not actually, there's not one specific person I'm actually talking about. It's an amalgamation of a bunch of people. Then there's the idea of sort of this worship of the written word. This comes up a lot, where it's basically like, if you can't prove that Black people invented locks first, you can't actually prove that it's harmful for white people to wear locks, blah, blah, blah. And that's really difficult. And an argument I had recently, the person was like, the sources they were bringing in were like questions answered on Quora versus like I brought in like actual historical documentation and research and things like that. Yeah. And then this idea of individualism and I'm the only one, like really wanting to think of everybody as individual and every conflict as only a conversation between individuals versus anything that's got a larger history. And then also thinking that you're the only one who has to fix it. One of the things that happens a lot when I try to help any kind of person in leadership deal with these issues, they can often refuse to see the idea that coalition is a thing that exists and that you can do things with other people and it does not have to just be you. Because one of the other things that will come from that is the person will say, well, I'm so busy, or can't you see how hard I'm trying? Or like, but I'm so much better than all the other events of the same type. Like, I even have a code of conduct, or we like, don't just allow like sex crimes to happen constantly in our events and not respond to them. And I'm just like, those are good things. And it's not about you. Making it about you really makes it worse. And this idea here especially has come up a lot, being blamed and shamed for acting to solve problems without checking in and asking for permission from white people. One of the complaints I've heard a lot is that even in a nonprofit I used to be a part of years ago, of like me trying to talk about social issues with some teachers we were hiring, the white woman who ran the nonprofit was livid that I didn't get permission from her first to talk about racism, basically. And I was like, and then she tried to say I wasn't allowed to talk to anybody about any of these issues without her explicit permission. And you can imagine how I responded to that. And, this idea of also valuing competition more than cooperation, really seeing any kind of collaboration as a losing game, really thinking that, like, if I build a coalition with this other group of people, I'm not the special one anymore. I'm not the one who looks good. And I've seen that with, like, getting together with an organizer to try to help them rewrite, say, their procedures for how to handle incidents or, like, create some kind of policy, or like even just training them, and then they want to act like, oh, it was all me, I just like came to these conclusions from my extremely big brain and my super ability to just know things. This is also part of I'm the only one. All of this stuff plays into it. Denial, denying that people know what's actually happening to them is a big one. And this other idea, claiming the right to define what is and is not racism. And this is one of the things that also gets me. Like, I'll be trying to talk about something and people will try to say like, well, I don't think that that's racism. And like, how could I know? And I'm like, well, listen to the people of this group who are telling you that it is. I'm sorry, there's a cat non-consensually blocking your screen. My solution as an aside, because I want to start to play the game now, is I got this great brush. It's called the Furminator. This is not a sponsored anything. The Furminator is incredibly effective. And it's really great because when my cats come and start to like harass me, I just like brush them a little bit. And they don't hate it, but they don't love it. So it's great because then I get so much fur from them. So it's not all over my carpets. My vacuum is much happier. And then they only stick around for a little bit and then they give me some space because they figured out how to open doors. So I can't, when I need to set a boundary with my cats, I can't just shut the door anymore. Anyway, I recommend checking out this document and thinking about how these things show up in your own life because we all do these things to varying degrees, and they're all also part of organizations and structures we tend to be a part of. There's another thing someone sent to me recently. I don't know if I can share this link because this was sent to me in my email, but maybe I can share this link. We'll see. See if you can click on that. And these are also really good questions to ask. You know, there's a lot of these things I see a lot. No outreach is done at any level to diversify the organization, or they are doing outreach for everyone and can't help it if only white people respond. Does not work. Okay, sorry. Yeah, I don't actually have a link to this. This is something that was emailed to me recently because a different event had some issues come up at their last event with some really racist things happening, and they want my help figuring out how to deal with those. But yeah, just look up Continuum on Becoming an Anti-Racist Arts and Cultural Organization. This one is a lot, like this idea that I can't help it if only white people are responding. When this comes up, there are usually pretty good reasons why. And one of them is, you know, is it clear that you're making space for people? And if you're not, that sends really clear signals. One of the other things is that happens a lot. Let me see, where is it on here? Yeah, it has a public statement on diversity, equity, and inclusion, but hasn't implemented any actual changes. And then this one is a big one. Marketing materials and website include a higher percentage of people of color than exist in the organization. And then the primary strategy for reaching communities of color is offering discounted opportunities or scholarships. And the antidote to this would be like, do they actually have any power to make any change in this organization? Are they actually being included in decision making, et cetera, et cetera? So let's think about these things while we actually play some game. Talking through all of this has been really cathartic. I really wanted to. I have to give a talk tomorrow. It can only be 15 minutes long. This is why I've been stressed out, because last year I gave the same talk on sort of power and privilege and the ability to say no. And this year I warned the organizers I was going to include appropriation in there. And I started stressing myself with the idea that I had 15 minutes to explain all of racism to a group of very privileged white people and to get them to change their minds on things. And then I had to like do it perfect. And I had this like window with like 70 tabs open to kind of try to like really make sure I like perfectly encapsulated the ideas and all this stuff. And I had to just, I had to chill because it was not healthy. So my goal for tomorrow is to just give the same talk I gave last year, bring up appropriation in a small amount, kind of gently, and then to get people thinking. If I get even a handful of people in the room to start thinking about the idea of appropriation and the issues involved and the harms that it can cause and the ways in which it would make this event less welcoming and safe for people, I will have achieved my goals. It's good enough, but like, that's that perfectionism creeping in. I put a lot of pressure on myself. That's also a little bit of like, I'm the only one, because I was kind of like, I've got this one opportunity. I've got to do this thing. It's a lot of I statements versus the antidote to this is to recognize like, one, I don't have that much power and I shouldn't try to pretend like I have that much power. It's not about me. Two, I have to recognize that I'm part of a larger continuum of this kind of activism. My individual successes and failures are not the end all be all of the whole movement. And it's a lot more complicated than that. I'm going to put it to windowed so that I can also see the chat. And, like really just letting go of a lot of that, right? Because I was really torturing myself with some very impossible expectations. And that was not good because it was resulting in me feeling like shit and being like super stressed out and being like, oh my goodness, is this going to be good enough? Oh my goodness. You can imagine. But I also needed to sort of let go of that because I'm not the only one. It's not just me. Look at this room. I'm going to put so many kegs in here. I'm so excited. Yeah, it's not just me. And hi, Ice Bunny. And so I calmed down. I calmed down a lot by just remembering these things. Winter seeds. Oh, right. It's the second day of winter. I forgot. Called a wood chipper. It'll break hardwood into normal wood. Thank you, Robin. What else is new? Catch me a squid. Fish them from the ocean at night. They will show up in the winter. Okay, I'm excited for these quests. Neutral spirits. Let me go pet my animals. Yes. And I gotta get my bucket because they are big enough, I think, for me to milk them now. And it's pretty exciting. Pretty exciting. Nope, not grapes. Oh, you like being milked. Yeah, that's also true. Most cows enjoy being milked. If you didn't know, now you know. They get kind of into it. Anyway, I had lots of thoughts. Thank you all for listening to all my thoughts on it. It's really good to talk through them and process it because I was also kind of like spinning in my head a little bit of just like all the different levels that I could talk about these things on and all the stresses related to that. I'm going to plant these winter seeds over here maybe. And it's nice to just talk about these things in general, to just be like, yeah, it's complicated and life is difficult, but it's not just me. And I don't only have one opportunity to talk about these things. Like I have a show. That's a lot of power and privilege to share my ideas. And I'm the co-director of a nonprofit, and that's also a lot of influence. And yeah, I was getting into some of that same thinking and really torturing myself with it. So yeah, you're right, Arad. Spiraling can be really brutal. It's exactly true. All right, how many more of these do I have to make? Only one more. Only one more. I'm gonna do it over here. All right. Winter seeds. What's it gonna get me? Cool. And I do want to stress though, again, talking about things like appropriation, like exchange is a thing. Cultural exchange is a real thing. Sharing with each other is a real thing. Appreciation, connection, becoming part of things like, if when I lived in Japan, I had taken a lot of, time to really deeply study something like tea ceremony, that would be something I could bring back into my life and share with other people. And it wouldn't be wrong, right? Like, it's not like you're not allowed to do anything because whatever. Anchor. Okay, let me put some things away. I'm not gonna go to the mines today, even though I would desperately like to, because I want to go and upgrade my axe. and I would like to do some fishing. I think that the fishing will be a really good idea. And I'm going to take this and I'm going to make some bait. Look at all that bait. It's lovely. Catch a squid, Gus's famous omelet. I need 24 eggs. Not quite there yet. The doggy is stuck on the thing. Find the shadowy figure. Catch a squid. To the bottom and the mare shorts. Okay. So I need my iron bars. So let's go. Let's go and see about upgrading our axe. I really want to get all of the tools upgraded. Like the hoe is really nice to have upgraded before the next year, because then you can just start the year off so much easier. I'm going to carp diem. You're exactly right. What? Come on, keyboard. Let's move. Hey, Mary Lewis. So yeah, it's thinking about all of that, right? Like, I don't begrudge the people who don't know what to do, right? Like, I'm not saying, oh, you're a bunch of bad people. It's like all my money. Okay, that's fine. Because you don't know these things. I'm not saying that, like, you know, you're not allowed to do things. When I try to talk to people about these issues, I'm always trying to say, like, hey, I get it. I get not knowing about these things. A lot of this information is more or less intentionally kept from you. Let's be honest, right? Like, I think I've mentioned before, I tutor some, German teenagers, and they spend a ton of time learning about racism in America, which then gives them the impression that Germany doesn't have any racism, or that it's somehow like not that bad or whatever, and that has really negative effects in the long term. But I don't begrudge them. I don't think that like they are bad people because they didn't see that it was propaganda in some manner, or at least like, misleading or giving them a particular narrative. It's just, oh yeah, tuna, look at that. We can just do better. And this is also part of coalition building, right? One of the things that's really important, both in terms of like not getting super defensive if you're like called out for something being racist or sexist or just harmful in some way, is remembering it's not about you. But there's something I also do when I'm trying to have a conversation with someone if I'm feeling really stressed by it. Sometimes it does become personal, but a lot of the time it isn't about me. It's not in that kind of very individual way. It's about me in maybe the collective sense. And so I want to build a coalition with the person I'm talking to. I mean, I always try to approach these, oh no, I messed that one up. These conversations from the idea of like, we're on the same team. We all kind of want to make the world a better place. Usually. I'm talking about when I try to talk to people who are actually interested in making the world a better place. Some people aren't, but it's tough. It's tough. And I've had a good conversation recently. Like I said, it was good, but I also retroactively got kind of stressed out by it. There are things that didn't really occur to me in the moment that later I was like, oh, this is weird or awkward, or like I didn't realize. I had to think on it and let it process. It's also a great example of consent, right? There can be something that in the moment you don't really realize isn't okay. And then later, when you process it more, you're like, oh, damn, this wasn't great. Like things that were said. Just little things here and there where I'm like, okay, yeah, this didn't occur to me at the time how weird this thing was, or how inappropriate or messed up. But now that I've had almost sort of a week to process it, I'm like, okay, this was And you're right, around, and realizing you don't know what to do is the first step to learning what to actually do. 100%. And this is why it's also important to have humility. So one of the things I said I really wanted to talk about today is like, how do we actually make space for people? And one of the things that is important to think about is, who do you want the space to actually be for and why? The first thing, just being able to define, like, who do you actually want to come into your life, into your friend group, into your social group, into your company, like whatever we're talking about, any space, who is it for and why? And then like, how do you define that group of people? And then looking at, okay, are those the people whose sense of belonging and safety and comfort you're prioritizing? You got to do a little bit of like systems thinking, looking at like underlying patterns and structures. Someone once told me that like they were a camp counselor at a summer camp that really wanted to be very sort of diversity or disability inclusive. And they would always rehire the same camp counselors every year unless there were complaints about them. And if there were complaints, they would do like an interview with them and then, you know, decide. But usually they did rehire them if there wasn't any like sort of egregious issues. But often what they discovered over time was that everybody that they had to do a re-interview with was someone who had been diagnosed with ADHD. So even though they had this really good intent, the impact of this policy and the way it was sort of done had ableism cooked into it, right? It was the sort of emergent property, we could say. Does that mean that all of the people in leadership hate people with ADHD? No. Does it mean that they were intending to cause harm? No. And you still want to look at, you know, why is this what's happening? Is there another system or structure we can put in place? Do we want to change the way we're doing things? And people can get really scared of those conversations because they're afraid of what they'll discover. But like, it also comes back to the whole people being more afraid of being called racist than doing something racist. And that's a common problem. And for me, I would rather know and then make a change than continue to kind of ignore something harmful that's happening by just kind of pretending it's not, or trying to explain it away, or getting really defensive. You know, it's like we have neighbors, right? I'm in an apartment complex, and we have people who live above us and below us. And the people who live below us have some very young kids, including one that was like, is about 2 years old now. Was like an infant when we first moved in. And their kids are noisy sometimes, but like this old building, you can barely hear anything. Every once in a while I can hear, like, I heard the baby crying, but it was like distant and muffled, not a problem. Every once in a while I can hear them playing music or their kids laughing or whatever, but it's really not a big deal. And I also really like to, you know, listen to music. Personally, I'm the kind of person who does like to listen to music kind of loud sometimes. I'm always careful to not do it after like 9 p.m. But they have 2 little kids, and I know that sometimes their kids are napping. So I'm always kind of like, I really try to be mindful. I don't know when their kids are there. I don't know when the kids are napping. But I try to think about these things. And I've checked in with them, and many times they've said, no, 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 you don't disturb us. Like they asked me recently, or they asked Charlie, oh, was someone listening to Kate Bush recently? And we were. I love Kate Bush, big fan of the Wuthering Heights song. But Charlie's first assumption was that we must have been listening to the music too loud, and they were like, no, 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 we're just, someone has good taste. But I would, if we were, say, too loud, I would want to know. I would want to know that we were causing some kind of stress for them, and then be able to just, you know, acknowledge it, apologize, and then change my behavior, maybe negotiate with them, find out about times. They can text me on WhatsApp, maybe at the beginning if I'm too loud, so we can get a better understanding. You know, checking in about it than them just be too polite to tell me. I trust them. I don't think that that's what's happening. But if it were, I would be sad. I don't want it to be a situation where I'm causing my neighbor some kind of difficulty and then they're too polite to tell me. And that kind of goes for all these other things, right? There will always be challenges, right? Where no organization, no subculture, no friend group can get rid of all of social issues in the world, right? Um, one of the things in our class, we have a class series, and I want to read what everyone's been saying in chat, called Consent and Leadership. And it's for anybody in any kind of leadership, whether you're like the CEO of a company or you're like trying to fight some kind of issue in your friend community or you're like an informal leader in like a church community or whatever. And one of the classes is called Problems, Difficulties, and Challenges. And the idea is that there's these three different levels. Problems are things that actually have a solution, something that you can just solve. Difficulties are things that can't be solved. They will come up again and again. They can be managed. And when they're managed, they'll kind of go away for a time and then they'll tend to come back. And challenges are things that are lifelong, things that we have to overcome. You know, like a problem is something like if I regularly forget to set my alarm and sometimes that makes me late for work. That's something that has a solution. Difficulty would be something like differences in libido in a romantic relationship. Any relationship over time, people's libidos fluctuate. It is very natural for them to overlap at some points and then otherwise be pretty diverged. A lot of people feel like that means there's something deeply wrong with their relationship, but usually it's normal. It's just a difficulty in life that tends to get managed or should be managed. And then challenges are things like sexism, racism, homophobia. That's something that we're called to action on for our entire life. And so trying to think about, in most situations, all three are going to be present. There are going to be some aspects that are problems that have solutions, some things that are difficulties to be managed, and some things that are just life challenges. And being able to slow down when confronted with something going wrong and kind of pick it apart and figure out which one is which, and then plan your responses to each type based off of what makes the most sense makes a huge difference. Anyway, Ice Bunny said, but the American society is much more diverse than the German or other nationalities. I looked it up for Denmark, 5.2 million are ethnic Danish, and the biggest group of foreigners with 32,000 are Germans, and there's not much of a difference. Krellin, yeah, there's the pervasive narrative that being called racist is the worst thing you can call. And I'm just like, bruh. Jerry, you said something to remember as well, though, is that most of the diversity in America happens in like 5 cities. Ice Bunny, but you have to remember that Germany has the national shame and the history they have. Aradin, I think it does tie into this sense of people wanting to claim a sense of victimhood so that they can use it as an excuse. Krellin, my state takes exception to that, Jerry. Aradin, I tend to assume that I offend or annoy people constantly, so I would like to know if that's actually happening. Yeah, I agree. Jerry, isn't New Mexico 82% white? And Krellin, only if you insist all Hispanics are white. Yeah, I mean, I think it's complicated. You know, this is Ice Bunny, to your point. One of the reasons why I don't blame people for not knowing, you know, like if people in Europe really feel a sense of, say, like difference or superiority related to things like the history of slavery, you know, part of that's because most of the slavery was done on site, i.e., out of sight in colonies, right? Like not that many African slaves were brought to Europe and then kept there. Most of the practices were done outside of it, which gave this sort of like essential ability to be out of sight, out of mind about a lot of things. And, you know, I always feel a little stressed about the idea that like the problems of racism are inevitably just a byproduct of multiculturalism and Like, um, what? Interesting book. Okay. Anyway, sometimes I think that there is the 2 points that can be taken from the lack of sort of racial diversity in a country leading to these thoughts. And one I definitely agree with, and one I feel slightly strange about. The one I agree with is that lack of proximity results in lack of knowledge or thinking about something. Um, you know, uh, there's a difference between like something being an issue of racism and something being an issue of like racial familiarity, right? And then there's also things like prioritization. Um, I gotta throw something away. Oh, Gold Star Crocus. Goodbye. I had to catch a squid, right? Catch a squid, bring Willie a squid. All right, we're good. We're good. I don't think Willie's at the bar, but let me double check. So, yes, I think that, it's also not on every person to know about every social issue and every like history of trauma and oppression in the world all the time. Like, that's also one of those things that's like part of this perfectionism in white supremacy culture. Um, that can really cause a lot of problems, which is this idea of like, well, if I'm not perfect, then what's the point of doing any of it? Like, if you're gonna tell me, oh yes, Willie says, hey, you did it, not bad at all. I'm impressed. Winter's a good time to break out the old fishing rod, isn't it? Yeah. Willie also says, I need a little warming up to be ready for another cold night on the ocean. Got 1 heart out of 10. In the future, I want to start really, what am I going to say? Remembering people's birthdays in this game and actually celebrating their birthdays. So, like, if I have a lack of knowledge about something and I am unintentionally causing some kind of harm, it's a certain amount of it can't be helped. You don't know what it is you don't know. And this is one of the reasons why I don't blame people for not knowing certain things. It's like, well, you probably wouldn't know it because it's something that's, maybe been intentionally or unintentionally kept from you, or it's something that, the world is trying to pretend isn't happening, or all kinds of different things. Then there's the like being aware that something could harm somebody or be a problem, and then not prioritizing learning more about it. I had someone recently say to me that like, years ago they said something really transphobic to a trans woman and like really deeply hurt her, and like they care so much about it and they're learning, they like, they're not a transphobe, they're going to work so hard to never do that kind of thing again. And then less than 5 minutes later also say to me, well, you can't hold me responsible for this thing being very heteronormative because I don't really know anything. I barely know that trans people even exist. I'm just starting to understand it. To me, there was a big contradiction there, which was saying both I've caused harm and recognize my responsibility for the harm I've caused, and I on no level have prioritized learning how to do anything different, and I don't want to be held accountable for learning to do something different. And to me, that's like a big problem, because it creates, as you can see, like a very clear kind of hierarchicalization, which also says between like my feelings about not being this kind of bigoted trump the actual impact I've had on people through actions I've taken or not taken. Therefore, don't hold me accountable for this thing, which is silly. I'm going to sell some of these things because I need to start raising some money. I'm not going to sell the frozen tears. I'm going to sell the amethyst. I'm going to go to the mines more, so I'll get more of these things. I'm going to keep the geodes, but I want to sell just a couple of things because I need to get some more money before the end of winter. if I want to upgrade more of my tools. I really should start making more barrels. What do I need for that again? Kegs. Wood, copper, iron, oak resin. Let's see if I can make more of those because that will be the thing that really helps me, yeah, expand. Oh man, ugh, I need to get more copper. I only have enough to make one keg. Bummer. All right, one is better than none, so that's fine. Um, so like this person who was saying this to me, like, sure, fine, I get it. It's not your priority. You got a lot of other things going on in your life. I always just want honesty from people, like just be honest that it's not your priority. Like you get that, X thing is a problem or is important and you don't want to prioritize it. And like whatever, like not entirely whatever, but whatever. Like just be honest about it. Um, and then we could talk about like why you don't want to prioritize it or what you might do instead or okay, what do I need to make these? Wood, stone, and coal. Okay, I should be able to make more of those. I recognize the time, but I need to make things to make money. Need money. How much stone do I have? Like no stone? That can't be right. I gotta have stone somewhere. What? What? So, oh, there we go. This person kind of wanted it both ways. They wanted to be able to say, like, I don't know anything, don't get mad at me, blah, blah, blah. And also at the same time say, but I'm a good person because I care so much about these things, which is also a common sort of thread, which is people wanting to basically say, just giving people my emotions is enough in the fight for justice. And most of the time, it doesn't help. Like, if you tell me you feel terrible about your ancestors colonizing, whatever, whatever, I don't care. Like, it doesn't do anything for me. It's not going to help, fix injustices that are faced by Indigenous people. Like, you feeling bad is it kind of, in some ways, just making it about you in the sense that, yeah, I mean, it sucks. Like, it sucks that our ancestors did all these shitty things and like caused all this harm. It does. That's definitely true. And you feeling bad doesn't mean anything. It sounds, I know, really mean. And I'm not trying to be mean with what I'm saying here. I'm trying to actually be very gentle with the idea that, like, it's okay if you feel bad. Like, you're not bad for feeling bad. But this person really just wanted to basically be like, my feelings are the honesty and the enough. Um, you're absolutely right, Krellin. And, it's, yeah. Anyway, Arada, and you said, yeah, the people are going to expect me to know everything and be perfect, which isn't going to happen, so I'm not going to bother trying. Definitely. Ice Bunny, now that we talk about it in the Danish news right now, a Prek half to 6-year-olds had to drop the First Nation theme for the summer party, and now the right-wing party has a politician word vomit about it. If one complains, it has to go over everyone. Yeah, that kind of thing is difficult. Like Carlini said, like something only someone who is used to their feelings being the most important thing would say. Yeah, and I've had white guys say that kind of thing to me too, but it's definitely people who are used, I 100% agree, like used to having their feelings prioritized, to taking up that kind of space. It's like support groups that are well managed will do things like usually have at least 2 people running the support group. I got the squid. Yes, look at that, 800. And part of it will include the idea of like, if you start crying during the support group, you need to step away because, oh, no mines for me. My goodness. Not because the people running the support group are like callous and hate you or whatever. It's because the support group is for everybody who's there, not just whoever starts to cry. And like, if you get into that space of emotion, it's okay, but you need to take a step away. And like, one of the facilitators will go with you. Um, Come on. Can I milk you? There we go. Um, and to comfort you, but you don't want it so that the whole group ends up stopping what's happening to comfort you. Yep, and it sucks all the attention. Exactly. Um, and Aradin, you also said it sounds more like I am saying this because I want you to feel sympathy for me, yeah, than actually caring about the thing. And it's true, like that is definitely how it feels. And it's how do I want to say this? On the flip side, okay, I always like to be very transparent about my own mistakes and my own things. A very long time ago, years ago, I used to have a kind of knee-jerk reaction when I was with, a group of people of color or in a very people of color sort of explicit space. I would sometimes feel the need to tell people quickly, hey, I'm mixed race, white passing, blah, 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 because I wanted to fast track that social belonging. Basically, I felt fragile and I wanted people to know basically, hey, I'm one of the good ones, whatever the fuck that means. I'm not saying that this is the right thing to do. I'm not proud of this. This is just the truth. This is the past me. And I learned later, I realized later, this is not a good way to do this. This isn't going to make people feel good about me. It's just going to be a big way of announcing, I feel terribly uncomfortable. Please tell me I'm a good person and I'm right. So I don't have to think about my privilege in this space or whatever. And that doesn't have a good effect, right? Like that didn't make people feel safer around me or anything of the sort. It just kind of announced to everybody, hey, I feel terribly uncomfortable. Please make me feel better. And why is that a problem? I mean, it made it about me. And like, it didn't tell them, hey, you can trust me. In fact, in many ways, it said the opposite. It said, I'm so concerned with you all thinking I'm a good person that I'm going to be incredibly awkward about everything and probably make you feel weird. So it had the opposite effect of what it was I was aiming for. I'm going to go to the mines anyway. Or no, I'm going to fish. I'm going to fish. I'm going to fish because I would like to get better at fishing. Can't go to the mines every day. They're still mildly annoyed spirits, whatever. And I had to learn to let go of that. Like letting go of this, like, I want people to know was honestly like a very important step in my life. And I'm glad I came to it a long time ago. And I had to just learn that, like, if I want people to think I'm trustworthy, because essentially what I was trying to say to them, I got to prove it through my actions. I can't just come and say, you can trust me. Because that doesn't necessarily mean anything. A lot of people say, you can trust me. And I had to learn how to show up in consistent ways and how to actually be a safe person to be around. And there's always more work I can do. There's always mistakes that I make. There's always things that go wrong in any, person's life. And I still work on those things. And when I've made a mistake, I meet it and, apologize for it or work on it or learn from it. But it's all kind of a similar thing. Sea cucumbers. Yes, this is great because sea cucumbers are essential for making Lucky Lunch, which is the best food in the game because it raises your luck the most, more than even the fried or baked eel or fried calamari or something that you can get from the little flying serpent dudes in the skull caverns. Lucky Lunch gives you the best luck bonus, which is really good for when you're going into the skull mines to get more prismatic shards, and you need sea cucumbers for them, and blue jazz, and I think tortillas, something else. So you got to grow the flowers and get the sea cucumbers, but it's tough because the flowers are in one season and the sea cucumbers are in winter. So you got to kind of manage it all. Yeah. Ice Bunny, you said, and for one who was a kindergarten teacher, summer parties are the same no matter what the kids dress up. And one part is delicious bread cooked over the fire outside and burned and inside raw. All right. That sounds delicious. Now I want delicious bread. Delicious bread. Okay, so one of the festivals I am going to go to, I have like 4 coming up this summer. Uh, I'm really hoping that the COVID numbers stay low because I need to make money. Um, so I'm going to go and teach outside, but it's still stressful. But one of them is going to have amazing food, and I'm thinking about it. Hi, Charlie. Still streaming?
Still streaming?
Yes. Kettlestick, you said magic rock can't. Sorry, I'm distracted. Trying to fish. Trying to say hello to Charlie. Trying to read Kettlestick. Magic rock candy has like +5, but it's way harder to get. I should get that. Want to say hello to everybody?
Hello.
Oh no.
Make some food.
Please make food. Yes. Thank you. Kettlestick says hi, 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 hi. Yeah. Also, as an aside, there's so many things I want to talk about every Tuesday stream, and I never have enough time to talk about all of them. And it's very exciting to chat with all of you. I really love it. But one of the things I've been also really thinking about, which is also a little like, is consent. Remember, we talked about in the past is about feelings, not about logic and rules. And part of that is like, how does it feel in your body? It's not just emotions, but like your body's physical responses to things. And if you want to get better at like noticing our boundaries and protecting our own consent, we have to get better connected to our bodies. And so some of what that means is like better somatic practices to kind of connect ourselves with each other and with ourselves and our own bodies. And I know a couple weeks ago I mentioned like doing a fish pose, lying on the ground like a fish. It's good for your mental health because it kind of like opens everything up in your chest. I mean, most of us like kind of roll our bodies forward and sit terribly at our desks, and like that creates this feedback of like protecting myself, and got all these different layers to it. I'm going to take some stuff over to the museum. I got a couple things in my inventory now that Gunther loves, so let's do that. Oh, you can only see Charlie's hands. So just thinking about like taking time to take care of ourselves physically, but like physically plus the emotional component. Like a lot of people really like, I'll take care of my physical self by like eating salads and running or whatever. And I'm not saying that those things are bad or that you shouldn't do those things, nothing like that. They're great. And there's like a physical, emotional kind of connection that you can have. And let's just think about it. Just think about it. A lot of the time, that's all I really want to say. It's like, let's think about this thing. But yeah, just trying to take care of our physical, emotional selves and to be good to ourselves about the sort of stresses we have and the ways in which we interact with our own bodies. And letting go of like ways in which we hold tension, especially when we think about things like, you know, being confronted with something to do with racism and having a bad reaction to it. I think it's often good, for example, for people to slow down and look at like how is their body responding to it, and kind of connect with themselves to maybe try to get a little bit out of the sort of fight or flight response, and take care of our bodies. Ice Bunny, you also said that was irony because no one ever got the inside baked, especially not the half to 6-year-old. Oh, well, I still want to try this delicious baked good that they give the children at summer parties. That sounds amazing. Man. Okay, don't lose this fish. Don't lose the fish. I love the fishing mini game in this game. Like one of my favorite parts of the game. At first, I didn't like it because my mouse is really not very good. Its click sensitivity is really crap. It's like this wireless USB mouse, and like same with the keyboard. And sometimes they both just like stop responding. Like you'll sometimes notice in the game, I'll like walk, and then suddenly my character will just stop, and that's because my keyboard just stopped responding, and the mouse does the same thing. But once I figured out how to make it work with this mouse, this fishing mini game has been so much fun. Pretty great, pretty great, pretty relaxing. So to all of that end, I've been playing some my own game of Stardew Valley, the other one that I don't play on stream recently, as a decompression thing. I have been trying to like, I guess, titrate or limit how much I play Stardew Valley outside of stream time because I don't want to get tired of it and then have that negatively affect gaming and streaming together and hanging out. Um, I do want to start to play some other games on other days. I know I've said this like 6 times now. I think I finally finished the PC components list for the desktop I'm going to build. So after this upcoming festival, because I'll be at a festival Wednesday to Sunday. So the Sunday stream, Ash, my co-director, will be running it, and surprises in store, fun times will be had. Um, and But once I get the PC components, I'm gonna live stream building the PC because I haven't built a PC since I was like 14. I haven't put one together in that long, so it'll be fun. I'll try to get 2 cameras set up so you can see like from above and also like straight on, if I can figure out how to do that. And we can hang out while I build my PC. I might do a little bit of live streaming at the festival this week because it should be in some really beautiful nature, but it's supposed to rain all week. But we'll see. We'll see. I might just post a video on Twitter or something. But I yes, once I get a new computer, I want to play some games with y'all. Oh, Krellin. I can just imagine this. I've been meaning to catch up on Troopers, the Long Dark streams. I watched some a while back and then I just haven't had time. But yeah. Oh man. Get it. Get this fish. Oh, tuna. I like getting all this tuna. Ice Bunny, you said, and the Danes will say Indian and not First Nation, but that would mean a Bollywood party. We have a lot of words in Danish that for us are normal words and would be offensive somewhere else in the world. Yeah, I'm not surprised. I mean, I've heard that. And yeah, someday those things will probably change. Aradin, I need to start looking at getting a new PC. I don't know enough nor feel comfortable enough to build one myself. Yeah, I mean, I don't really either. That's why I've been asking friends for advice like Kettlestick and Charlie's co-worker office mate, who's also a friend, because he's like the microscope expert. So he builds the lab's custom microscopes and like the computers that control the microscopes and everything. So he knows a ton about computer stuff. Um, we use PC part picker because it'll help make sure that the parts are all compatible with each other and also correct size. Because sometimes people will order like a huge fan or a really big graphics card, and then the case that they get doesn't fit it. And so that's been really helpful. But yeah, I don't really know very much either. I hope I level up at fishing after today. Yeah, you're right, Carlin. There are some people who do identify with Indian, and yeah, especially on native Twitter, people often write Indian for Indian. And yeah, there's all different ways to identify. People will sometimes ask me, like, what's the more politically correct way? And I'm like, there are so many opinions. There are so many opinions. There are millions of Native Americans just in America alone. It's like 3 million, and that are like reporting on the census, right? So plus or minus some number. Um, but yeah, and the opinions are very varied. Look at all these good fish. I still have room in my inventory too, which is fantastic. Fantastic. I'm probably going to stop at the end of this day because I do need to run some errands before the store is closed. Closed, not clothes. Uh, exactly, Krellin. Uh, and I need to eat. I successfully managed to eat a snack though before the stream, so I wasn't starving by the end of it. Because most weeks I'm like, I'll have lunch, but find myself getting just like really painfully hungry. Right? Oh no, I'm about to run out of energy. Oh, I feel sluggish from overexertion. Big mistake. No, I'm gonna save that crystal fruit. I think I need it for the community center. I'm not sure. Also, man, the audio in this game messes up even when I'm playing not streaming with it full screened, nothing else going on in the background. I think my computer is just old and sad. It's sad. I'm right there with you, Rodden. I usually eat breakfast and lunch together. Oh, don't lose this fish. Gotta get the treasure chest. Don't lose fish. Yes. Okay. I should probably start to walk back home because I'm sluggish from overexertion. Oh no, it's okay. It's okay. I can move. Yes, I was worried I was gonna be like super slow and then it would take me until 2 a.m. to get to my bed. Oh no. Oh no. This too powerful. That fish was too powerful. Could not get it. Come on, fishy. Come on, fishy. Yeah. Yeah. Look at that. Amazing. Look how many fish I've got. This is so great. Nope. Too powerful. Yes. Next fish. Come on, fishy. Come on, fishy. Okay, last cast because I'm starting to get exhausted. Ooh. All right. Yep. Oh no. Oh no. Come on. Come on. Yes, herring. All right, let's go. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the real challenges of the long dark is like not carrying too much stuff because it's so hard too, especially if you're moving between regions and you're like, okay, I've had this base for a while, but I'm gonna move over to this new base because like you just don't want to leave all the good stuff behind and it's so difficult. But you can't carry that much ever, and the more tired you get, the less you can carry. It is a vicious cycle. Difficult time. Oh, it isn't limited to the long dark. It's any game. Yeah. I mean, Trooper has said to me several times that he likes hoarding, and I believe that that's just true. I believe that that is a major part of the appeal of the games is the fact that you can hoard things in them. And I get it. It's pretty cool. Hoarding stuff has its appeal. That's pretty funny. All right, let's do some blackberry jam and let's do some more delicious mayonnaise. I do love mayonnaise. Like IRL, mayonnaise is pretty great. Just adds so much more fat to food and so good. Wild plum jelly, pretty nice. Gold Star mayo. Got some. Oh, I'm really tempted to sell this purple sea cucumber because it's purple. Ooh, not gonna do it. Gonna save that. Gonna save that. Is the basis of your relationship to yell at him to sell stuff? Beautiful. Sounds like a wonderful, wonderful relationship. Okay, I got too much fish. I need more. I need more. I need to start buying refrigerators. In my other game, I have like 20 refrigerators in my house for all the different things I can cook. And it's a bit silly. Bit silly. All right, let's see. I don't have too much energy left. Can't really do any chores. Womp womp. Ugh. I want to go to the mine so bad, though. I want to go to the mine so bad. Fortune teller. Today was neutral. Somewhat annoyed. What's the weather report for tomorrow? Few inches of snow tomorrow. Go to sleep for the night. All right. I do want to play one more day, and then I will stop. One more day. I really just craving it. Craving one more day. All right. Steel axe is ready, fortune teller. Let's see. Feeling neutral today. Good enough. I'm going to the mines. Whatever. Gotta go to the mines. Gotta pet my animals first. No more days. No, I gotta do one more day. One more. I want to go to the mines. Come here, milk pail. I'm gonna get you. They sound so forlorn. Yeah, it's great. Okay. Chickens, let's say hello to the chickens. Nice. Get those eggs. How many more eggs do I need for Gus? Oh man. 2 more days. 2 more days and we will have all the eggs we need. Pretty great. Pretty great. Say hi to my puppy. Hi, doggy. All right. I'm gonna put these eggs in there. I'm gonna take a little bit more blackberry because I will probably want to eat lots of foods while in the mines. Sell that. Okay. Put my fishing pole away. Where are my bombs? Because I need the bombs. Yes, bombs. That's all I've got right now. Okay, that's fine. I always like to put the bombs on the far side to reduce the risk of me accidentally putting them down. Yeah. Another lost book. Woohoo. Look at that crystal fruit. Foraging's great. One more day. Let's go mines. Let's do it. Let's see if we can get to the bottom. 105. Oh man, I have like no energy. What is this? It's because I overexerted myself yesterday, isn't it? Okay, good enough. Shadow dude, get away from me! Woo! Stressful. Oh man, we got red slimes over there. Not good. two of them at once, always a little bit difficult. Oh. One thing I really like, y'all, about hanging out with you is hearing your opinions. It's quite nice. Including your opinions on, oh no, I'm making a big mistake. Oh my God. Wrong weapon. Oh, I'm gonna have to eat some food after this. All right, I gotta trap you. Okay, let's just have this Joja Cola. See if that does me enough. Not really. Okay, no. And there's bat coming. Boo. Oh, it's a red bat too. Bummer. Oh, there's a shadow dude over there too. I'm just out of here. Too much. Too much drama. Too much drama in that level of the cave. Yeah. Okay. Get my sword out. Let's do it. I need more copper. I mean, I want to get to the bottom of the mines, but I am actually kind of hurting for copper because there's all these things I want to build that I can't build without copper. Rough. But I'll get to the bottom of the mines first. And then I'll go back and try to get more copper. Ugh, one of these dudes. Why are you so cool with your mask? What are you doing, man? Oh no, a bat. What are you up to, bat? Why are you gonna come hate on me, huh? Ugh, I suck at fighting those bats. Not great. I gotta get better at the aiming and the timing and the... Anyway, I'm excited to build a new computer and made it to another level. Look at that, 110. Space boots, heck yeah. Let's see, these are +3 and 3, +4 and 4. Would you look at that? And they match better. They look cool. I'm gonna eat some more of these blackberries. I thought I brought enough food. I don't think so. It's never enough food. Let me just plop this guy down. Need to upgrade my pickaxe soon. That'll be really nice. I gotta get this little guy. Woo! Where are you at, bat? Come on. All right. Try to be skillful. Look at that. Did it. Oh, yeah, more things this way. Look at all that gold ore. Nice. All right, rubies. Beautiful. Wow, the gold ore takes so long. So long. Oh, yeah. Nice. Okay. Oh gosh, bat. Just didn't even notice it. I always feel a little bad though, because I'm like, I'm just kind of invading everybody's ecosystem and like screwing up their day. Oh man, there's a creepy skeleton over there. Look at that, just like in the wall. What are you doing over there, dude? What are you doing? Oh, there's stairs. Yes. You dodge the slime. It's great. Okay, 2 people who want to kick my butt. Oh man, 3 people who want to kick my butt. Ugh. Facing the wrong direction. I hope I don't die. Oh my goodness, that was lucky. That was very lucky. Gotta eat all the things, heal myself. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Okay. Let's see. This is also great because it's giving me more stone, but really I need a lot more stone than all of this. Oh yes. Down. I'm gonna, no, cave carrots. Don't really have room in my inventory for cave carrots. Look at that. I got 10 more levels already. I think I only need 5 more until I'm reach the bottom of this. I can maybe do that today. We'll see. We'll see. It'd be very cool if I did. I think the bottom is 120. I could be wrong. If the Tiburon were here, she would know. You could tell me. Come on. The number of times I just miss with my swings, too high. Just hitting the wrong thing. What is up? I'm hitting everything. No stairs yet? Do I have to kill this monster? No, there we go. Let's go over here. Yeah. Oh, there's one of those freaky dudes. Oh no, a bat. Oh, what am I doing? Wrong way. Wrong way. All right, let's set down a bigger bomb. But I gotta run. What? Nothing? Come on back. Yeah. I'm gonna eat some more fruit. Heal me up. I think I still have just a copper pickaxe. Bummer. I really gotta upgrade this thing. And soon. Oh no. Oh no, bat. All right. Oh, there are stairs already there. All right. Oh no, I gotta kill this guy. Whew. Well, let's see. 3 more levels. Can I do it? Can I do it before the end of the day? Yes. Alrighty, come on. Look, finally some copper. That's nice. All right, can I go fight this thing? I don't want to fight that guy. I don't care. Alrighty, okay. 119. Let's see if we can do it. At least a 120. I think 120 is the end. Like I said, I'm not sure. Come on, how do I miss them so easily? There we go. All right, now I need to heal myself again. I go through my blackberry supply so fast. So fast. All right, let's do this. Let's see. Can we make progress? I'm going to use a cherry bomb here. Too many things. Let's see. Nothing. Ugh. Come on. I want to go down. Just one more level. Yes. It's the bottom. Look at that. I got the key. Found the skull key. You're not sure what it is for, but it seems important. It's been added to my wallet. And I made it to discover the purpose of the skull key. Nice. Look at this cute little snaky dude over here. And this little snaky dude. Amazing. But I made it to the bottom. Leave the mind. We did it. We did it. Amazing. Look at that. Look at that. Alrighty. Quite the accomplishment. All right. I did not get very much ore at all. That's some gold ore. I'm gonna make at least one copper bar though, because I'm really hurting for copper bars. Oh, and some wine is ready to sell. That's a big deal. I'm gonna sell these. Alrighty, look at that. Look at that. All right. Got some blueberry wine to sell. Let's sell this egg, or not sell this egg. Let's make some mayonnaise. Look at that. It's amazing. All right, let's make some more gold bars, I guess. Really wasn't very much ore and at this last run. But we made it to the bottom. That's really what matters. Look at that. Amazing. Okay. Let's see. Once around on the farm, let's just make sure there's nothing too silly happening. How are these traps doing? Nothing in them. All right, I'm gonna go to bed and it'll be the last day. And pretty good. I don't know if you can hear it, you probably can't, but this cat is purring so loud. So loud. It's lovely. Alrighty. All right, it is getting late. Low on energy. Let's go to sleep. So I made some money. Some money. Can continue to afford my upgrades. All right, wonderful. So let's stop here today. Thank you all for chatting with me. I feel good and relaxed, and this was a lot of fun. You've been up since 4:30, Krellin. Wild. Yeah, nap sounds like a good idea. Well, I will probably not be here on Sunday for the stream. I will probably be getting back right as the stream starts. So I will talk to you all next Tuesday for more Stardew Valley. And then the following Sunday, not this Sunday, but next Sunday, Jessica Price will be my guest. So that should be really nice. And if you're interested, Wednesday the 22nd, our Consent and Leadership series is starting again. It will be in the mornings, US time, evenings, Europe. If you're interested, we have sliding scale pricing. If the price is too much for you, you can always send us an email as well, and we can negotiate that. If you enjoyed the stream and you're not following us already, consider giving us a follow, and also think about checking out our social media and our Patreon. I promise we have a bunch of stuff in store for the Patreon coming soon. That should be pretty fun. Some exclusive content. And yeah, it was just lovely to hang out with all of you today. I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and I'll catch you next week. Bye.